Joining me now, in addition, is Kurt Bardella. He's a former Breitbart News spokesman. He's worked closely with Steve Bannon and advised conservative causes. Kurt, we can definitely benefit from some of your expertise here, and we wanted to bring you in specifically on the question of Steve Bannon's fate. Because Anthony Scaramucci didn't just say Reince was on the way out. He didn't just say he would have a lot of power reporting directly to the president. He also said really objectionable things about Steve Bannon that we're not going to give airtime to, but basically implied that he had the upper hand. And then in Breitbart today, there was interesting pushback. That's the site that you, of course, advised that is sympathetic to Steve Bannon, that he used to run, where they started arguing that this is all becoming the Anthony Scaramucci show, and that President Trump will be out of the news. That's the kind of thing that might upset him. Walk us through what Breitbart's doing and the future of Steve Bannon in this context.
Well, I think Breitbart's trying to illustrate really what got Steve in trouble. Remember, when Steve was on the cover of Time magazine, that's kind of when the dissension between him and Donald Trump started. Trump was very vocal and visibly vocal and kind of smacking down Steve, and there was speculation that Steve may not survive at that point in time just a few months ago. And now Breitbart's trying to illustrate for the president that, hey, this guy is doing the same thing that got you so upset at Steve, hoping that that either creates a situation where where Trump comes down on Scaramucci, or where Scaramucci maybe backs off a little bit in his public attacks of Steve Bannon. I think at the end of the day, the reality is, whether it's Jeff Sessions or Steve Bannon, and obviously Reince Preibus, these were people who were very publicly humiliated by one of their own colleagues who reports directly to the president, doesn't even report directly to the new White House chief of staff. This isn't going to stop, and I think Scaramucci is trying to really remove anybody that he thinks could be an obstacle to his power base. I mean, it's very, you know, we've heard the analogy of this is so Game of Thrones-like, and these people within the White House build their own fiefdoms, their own center of power, and when they have the upper hand and they're kind of the new shiny toy on the shelf for Donald Trump, they try to use that moment to neutralize anybody that could be a possible threat to them.
And based on your knowledge of Bannon, will he find a way to wriggle out of this?
Well, Bannon is, if anything, he's a survivor. He's someone who will scratch and claw. He's a street fighter. And we saw already how he was resilient enough to overcome the previous attempt to try to have him removed. And I think, again, the one thing to keep in mind is, while all this is going on, there's still this big Russia investigation being conducted. And as long as that's the case, Steve made himself instrumental to the president in leading the messaging, leading the fight back, the pushback, the aggressive style against that. And I think the one thing the president is going to keep in mind is that as he tries to carve out people and lose people, that he needs as many people in his boat as he could possibly keep while this Russia situation is still unfolding.
Kurt, stay with us. Your time around Breitbart and the conservative ecosystem, was this the expectation for how Donald Trump would manage?
No, I think that they believed that upon taking office that they would be able to go gangbusters and be wildly successful. And all the things that they've tried to do and have failed miserably on, they thought that they would happen very quickly and very easily. And now I think that conservative circles, I mean, really the most, I think, important thing that happened this week, really, in that world, was the fight with Jeff Sessions, where it put them squarely in the middle, where for the first time you had conservatives and conservative publications and commentators having to criticize the president, who they have bent over backwards to try to defend every single thing that he's done that's been awful. They were actually put in the middle and had to criticize the president for the first time. Breitbart was putting up stories talking about how Jeff Sessions has been a hero and an ally. It was an unusual dynamic that might have represented the first real splintering. And I think everything that's happened in the last 72 hours shows that they're also concerned that Donald Trump might just start turning on everybody. And that for people in Congress, they are very concerned that now Trump is just going to go gangbusters and attack them, because the one person that was standing in between the House Republican Conference and the Senate Republican Conference was Reince Preibus. And now that's been removed. And slowly over time, we're seeing Donald Trump remove people that might have been willing to walk into the Oval Office and say no to him, and he's fired them all,
right,
or
and give
they've
some
resigned.
Context. Aaron Gloria Ryan.